Hi everybody. In this video we're going to walk through this proof of concept. Now, many customers that I've spoken to have implemented or have got their own version of an app catalog. So if you imagine, as customers, as the number of apps increase in their environments, they want to have some way of surfacing the ones that are most important, or and that's usually to prevent siloed development and encourage reuse, but also to promote or feature apps that are sort of enterprise wide. So how do we end up with this? So I had a conversation with a customer a little while ago, and because the conversation based around this kind of topic where they now have nearly 600 apps in their environment, and their app catalog is just listing everything, right? So it's not providing an intuitive way for people to find apps that are of relevance. What can I do? What the question was, how can I help? So I had 1 day of time set aside to put together a proof of concept. So what we're seeing, what I'm going to run through is just a few hours worth of work. But essentially what I've done is come up with the idea of building an intelligent app catalog. So one that can display apps that are relevant to the user, to the current user of the app, and providing some means of categorizing the apps that they already have. So using the data that I know we have about an app. So if you think about the admin connectors, when you look at the data that's returned about an app, there are two particular properties that could be used to try and better understand where that app, or how to categorize that app or classify it. And that's the title of the app, and also the description field. Now I decided, okay, so what could we do with those two pieces of information? So I thought about using AI Builder and the category classification model. So I started pulling together a flow that that iterates over each of your apps and attempts to to classify it, to put some categories on it. Now the thought being this is, if we can use the description field, we're going to get some useful categories back that we could potentially then apply to our catalog and put some filtering in. So I tried the standard model. So if I walk through the flow just quickly, this video is going to be a bit random in the way that it's delivered, purely because I've done no prep for it really, but I want to share this because I think it could be useful. So essentially I'm running through each of the apps, and if the app has a description, because not everybody completes the description field, so I know that already kind of reduces the efficacy of this solution. But if it worked, if I can prove that this works, then the customer said that they will make the description field mandatory. Anyway, so we pass this information into AI Builder, and it does a job. Sorry if I'm coughing a lot, I'm just getting over a cold. So we pass the description in, and then it applies a row. So sorry, it returns the categories that it detects from the description text, and then adds a new row into a data first table where I have the app name. So I've created a table called app categorizations, which just has the GUID of the app and the classification. So what tag was it applied? I've also captured the environment ID, and I've got this column here called categorize property, and that's because I wanted to identify the rows in my table that have been tagged by their description. In the case where there's no description, I try using the title of the app. Now, the title possibly isn't going to give us much, so I've put in there that the confidence score needs to be quite high for us to use that, and then add that into our table. Now, I use this using the standard model, and I was impressed initially. This was my first attempt. I was impressed. It worked really well. It was pulling out some interesting categories, but it wasn't quite what I wanted. So I pulled together a flow that did something very similar. It just iterates through all of my, in fact, I could probably just bring it up. Get app descriptions. Here we go. So this is the flow that I used. So the intention for me was definitely to use AI, definitely to use category classification, because to me that's working. That's a given. But the standard model wasn't cutting it for me. It wasn't giving me enough. So I needed to create and train my own model. So again, I walked through all of the apps. To do that training, I need to have data. So I essentially go through all of the apps. I get the description and add that into Dataverse. Now, if I go into Dataverse, here, this is the descriptions of my app. So I have the description column. Then what I had to do was to manually go through and add in my own tags. So reading the description, I'm tagging that, and because I want to use this classification to add not just filtering, so I can filter it by the kind of app that we have, but also by the by department. So I figured, right, if I use department names as the tag, well, then what I can do is I can build, I can add in a section of my app that surfaces apps that have been tagged to the department of the user, if that makes sense. So I've gone through and I've tagged my data. I've then passed that data into the category classification model and trained it. I'm very happy with the score here. 89 is a good score. I don't want it too much higher, and I don't want it too much lower. I started off initially around the sort of 50-55 range, and it wasn't very good at all, as you would expect. But now, I've been testing this model and it's working really, really nicely. So back to my original flow. So now I'm passing the display name or the description field into my own model, and then adding in data into Dataverse. So if I now look in Dataverse, the actual information that's been entered is here, called app categorization. Okay. So if I look in this is my actual data from that flow. So it's taken the app name. Let's have a look at the custom columns, it'll make more sense. So I have the app name, which is the GUID, and then the classification. Now, straight away I can see, people saying, well, nobody uses the description field, Steve, right? Very few people do. So what we could do in this instance, because we're now moving towards a position where we can prove that this is really effective, back to the original flow, where where there's no description field, you could send something to the app maker and say, please go in and update your description field. We're trying to improve the organization's app catalog, and I'm sure they will. It's not too much of an ask, is it? Okay, so back to the data. So here's our data. Now into the app. So I'm now able to filter based on the tag. So I have a tag for productivity, which is just general apps. I have these are the tags. This piece here is based on the user of the app. So if I look at my profile, and if it's going to be updated just yet. Don't think it will be. Yeah, so there you go. So I've added in my own profile, I've said that I'm in the engineering team, and this gallery here filters apps based on the current user of the app, right? Based on their department. So all of the apps here would be tagged with my department. All of the apps in this gallery are filtered, so I can look at all of the apps for marketing, I can look at the apps for engineering, or I can look at the apps that have been categorized as productivity. So it's actually quite cool, and I think, given more time, this is very very basic. I would definitely spend more time making this look cool, but for now, I think it's enough to prove that using AI Builder with the category classification model, you can build out an intelligent app catalog for your organization. I'll be sharing this in GitHub as usual, so feel free to have it. Thanks.